My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Christine O'Donnell, Dina Nazmi Khorchid, Marla McLeod, and Diana Weymar, all of whom are associated with the outstanding exhibition entitled Material Progress, which is on display at the ShowUp exhibition space in Boston's SoWa neighborhood. Christine is the founder and executive director of ShowUp, and Dina, Marla, and Diana are the highly accomplished artists whose artwork is featured in the Material Progress exhibition, which is on view until December 1st. During the program, we're learning why and how the exhibition came about. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate both the artistry of our guests and the timely exploration of some of the issues that divide our country today and the importance of participation in a well-functioning democracy. Let's start by meeting our guest and then learning all about the Material Progress exhibition and some of the many ways ShowUp creates an environment for underrepresented artists, connects artists to local communities and beyond, and promotes civic engagement. Welcome. So delighted you're all able to be here.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Last week I had the wonderful opportunity to visit the exhibition and show up, eager to find out more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, Christine, would you start by just sharing a little bit about your background and then why and how ShowUp came about, its mission, vision, please?
Sure. I am so enthusiastic about what I do, so I'm going to have to try to keep this short because I could talk forever about what I do. So ShowUp really became a front-facing space just at the start of 2024, but its origin was in 2017 when I opened Beacon Gallery in the same location on Harrison Ave in Boston's SoWa neighborhood in the South End. Um, At that point, when I opened Beacon Gallery, I almost immediately started working in the realm of social impact and art activism with my artists and the exhibitions that we put on. I was both running the space and curating almost all the exhibitions. Over time, I came to see that my space would best be served, and the artists in the space would best be served by being a nonprofit. We would have a lot more flexibility in what we were doing. I would be able to bring more people into what I was doing, and work with more art activists, refine the mission. So we were also working with underrepresented artists. And in 2023, we took the leap. It took us about a year to get that going, get reorganized. And we started that in 2024. And this is one of the exhibitions that I personally curated, very passionate about this show and super excited to be here talking about it.
Wonderful, wonderful, for all good reason. Would you continue then and share how it came about, how the artists were selected, your intention for this?
Sure. Um, Diana Weymar and I have been working together since we met probably in 2019, I would say. So good 5 years ago now. And when I saw her work in New York originally, I fell in love with it and I fell in love with her. I was so inspired by the Tiny Pricks project and that the work that she was doing. I'll let Diana talk more about the Tiny Pricks project, but it's the nature of it and it's the fact that it's like a public project and its community-based nature and the political side of it, all of it really spoke to me. And I exhibited it for the first time as part of a different exhibition at Beacon Gallery in 2020. And we made a promise that if for this coming election that we're having now, Donald Trump was running again. We were going to show her work again. While we are now a nonprofit, and so we're less specifically focused on the candidates that are running, we are still very, I would say, politically activated in the issues at hand. And I was thus very excited to actually put on this exhibition. And Diana and I have been talking about it probably for the last 2 years. In putting it together, we had to come up with a concept that was going to remain relevant as we continue to plan it. And in looking forward, our country changes really quickly. And we wanted to consider that and consider how to remain relevant over time, and came up with some of the themes that are at the heart of it. And Dina's work and Marla's work really, and Diana's work, obviously, address a lot of the themes that you will see and that we'll talk about. And what those are looking at the moment we're in now, the instability of our democracy, which is something, alas, we have not solved in the last 2 years, and we were pretty sure that was not going to happen. And where we have been, our history, our shared history, our personal history, how we contemplate that history, how we show that history, how these artists present that history, and where we may be going. And here we have an amazing picture of all of us together. And it has been an absolute delight to work with all of these women, incredibly talented people. And the show has been amazing. We've had a wonderful reaction to it, and to everyone's work. The work really resonates with people. And it's also different, and yet it comes together in a very resonant way, I would say.
Most definitely, most definitely. We're going to move on and hear from the artist and see the range of artwork that is on view at the exhibition. Dina, with that in mind, going to bring up one of your pieces, but before we hear a little bit about it, just very briefly, if you'd like to add a little bit more about your background, artistic and professional interests, please.
Thank you so much for having me, and to Christine for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be alongside Marla and Diana in this wonderful exhibition. I'm a visual artist with a background in design and textiles, and that's very much in the core of my work. I create art pieces that are textile installations and wall hangings that are printed or woven. Um, and I explore themes of displacement and memory and land access, grief in relation to being a Palestinian refugee and a daughter of a missing casualty from the Gulf War, and an artist. So it's a lot of personal narrative, and also just trying to connect to an identity.
Speaking of the personal narrative, a few words about the piece we're seeing here, believe entitled, I Put a Screen Between Us to Face Loss Less Profoundly.
Yes, so this piece and many of the pieces in the exhibition feature a what I like to refer to as a resting pigeon, meaning a pigeon that is deceased. Um, and the iconography of a pigeon relates to a memory from my childhood of drawing a pigeon, and that being the only tangible memory that I have left from my father in a letter that he wrote describing my 3-year-old self. Um, and so I've used the pigeon as a symbol to connect back to that memory, and also to think of how emotions of grief are difficult to address in a way that's very raw, and instead, whether it's by um, a curtain or a barrier or a phone screen, which is what inspired the title of this piece, that becomes a way to deal with difficult subjects and bring them about uh, as a gentler way to cope. And you'll notice there's a lot of pattern making as a reference to textiles production, but also thoughts that continue to come back into our brains in relation to difficult subjects.
It's stunning. And picking up on the next one, also Pigeons on Repeat, The Stare.
Yes, so this piece was focused on the aesthetics of the pigeon, this bird that is often overlooked or thought of as an annoyance in a very urban environment, while I try to really bring out its beauty and at the same time its confrontation by having the scale of an eye looking directly at a viewer in that sense.
What appeals to you about working in this type of medium?
I think I've always had a very tactile relationship to making and going about even just my daily rituals. But textiles are also very much at the core of being Palestinian, perhaps more with Palestinian embroidery, tatreez,
Mm,
but also with a lot of cultures that are forced out of their countries or immigrate. Textiles tend to be something that is transported and passed on to generations. It is also uh, one of the first things that covers a human at birth. It's a
mm.
shelter, it's a tent. It's all of those references to the medium that I really connect with.
What do you hope visitors, viewers, and others either come away with or appreciate from your work?
I would hope that if you were, despite perhaps me not being there to share more about the stories, that they would still resonate with them and that the feeling and the emotions that are present in the piece come through and invite them to pause and reflect and wonder and perhaps try to seek more answers. So that's what I would hope.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. I know in the credits we'll have some contact and follow-up information. But for now, we're going to move on. Welcome you, Marla. And as we bring up one of the pieces we'll hear about shortly, would you start with a little bit about your background and your art interest, please?
Yes, my background, I am an artist, an educator, and a curator. And my art interest is really an identity. And with all of those things, I'm very interdisciplinary with the materials and approaches that I use with my work. Yeah.
No, and I think that what we see right here sums up all you just said in those few sentences. Self-portrait and the multi-dimension of your work. Would you pick up on why and how this came about, the piece we're enjoying here, one of the few first pieces that viewers get to see as they enter the exhibition?
Absolutely. This piece is actually, again, is a self-portrait. If I were to ever rename it, it would be, I don't know, as American as apple pie. And I say that because of what it actually represents. It is a breakdown of my genetic, my cultural identities, of which are Indigenous, African American, and European American.
Hmm.
My European American roots really come from the Europeans who came over and helped to establish this American space. So, as a representation of that, I put on the torso of the mannequin the Declaration of Independence, and as such, including the African American space on my right arm, which is my dominant arm. You will find representations from that space, including things like a brown paper bag, where that is leading into ideas of colorism within the Black community. Then we have on the left arm an indigenous space or indigenous roots, and the information in there include like the names of my tribes that are hidden within the beadwork. You can see how all the different materials apply in different ways to the different spaces, but all of that is combined into the one space, which is myself, right? But that history and those materials blending together kind of tells the story of what
Mm.
that looks like.
You know, for this type of piece, Do you have it all sketched out and know exactly where's gonna go, different pieces, what materials you'll end up using, or does it evolve a little as you're getting into it?
Oh my goodness, the sculptures evolve. I also am a painter and I do drawings as well. Those are very, very structured. I know exactly what I'm going to paint. I know exactly the colors I'm going to use. But when it comes to sculpture, it definitively it grows, right? It starts with this idea, like I know I have my body. And I know that it is pieced together from different parts, from different spaces. And how am I going to apply that? Where do I apply those spaces? And that's why, like that majority, it's that torso. It's really our roots, these American roots, that Declaration of Independence that really holds our space together, right? But also it has cultural connotations to it as well, right? On the right arm, you'll see the fist, the Black Power fist,
Mhm.
symbolized there in small sticks, which are a switch. Something I
Mm.
know very well from growing up with a
Mm.
foster mom from the South, right? Um, and so there's all sorts of little tiny things where that the materials really lead, or ideas that the materials lead to as well with their use.
And we're going to move on to the second piece we're going to hear about, incredibly powerful piece, The American Dream, 229 deaths in 2018. Please share the background of this and how you went about it.
Absolutely. So one of my backgrounds is I went in undergrad. I started my undergrad in geographic information systems, which is really data collection. And
Wow.
we're looking at hard numbers. And when I was introduced to the art space, I figured instead of putting that information in graphs and into charts, I could put it into art. And that's another way that material really comes into this, right?
Mm.
I can use any materials to represent this information. Um, so this piece in particular is really talking about the 229 Black lives that were taken by police. They were shot and killed by the police in 2018. And what I did was I took the 229 pieces of twine, all at 79.5 inches long, which was the average American lifespan
Mm.
during that time. And then I indicate each figure or each person that was shot and killed. And the black line is a piece of yarn that I've wrapped up from the bottom going towards one of these gold capitals. And each one of those stops at the age of death of that individual. So you really get a visual on how much life was lived, how much life was left to live, and that American dream at the top, this thing that we're all reaching for with the time we have here.
Yeah, it's shocking, to read a little bit while you're there about the background, and to put it all together and to hear you say more. Just an incredible piece of work.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a hard piece. I haven't done another. I thought that I would do one for every year, but the physical and mental toll that it took to make this piece it was a lot. It was a lot. I'm still contemplating making future ones, but it
Mhm.
will take time.
Okay, again, for the sake of time, we're going to move on, but we'll have some contact information for you as well in the credits. Thank you, Marla.
Thank you.
Diana, want to move on and hear a little bit about your background and then definitely how incredible project that you've been involved with now, the Tiny Pricks project came about and what you had in mind for your contribution to material progress, please.
Um, well, what is my background is that I have done many different things, but I really started working in textile about a decade ago. I'm a mother of four, so I'm on the go. I was very interested in art therapy, and I discovered that textile is something we have a lot of, and it's easy to carry around in a bag. And it turned out that that kind of access for myself translated into creating a massive project that was easily accessible for other people so that there were no barriers to participation, whether it were cost, time, materials. And so that really is how it started. And Tiny Bricks Project started with this particular piece we're looking at. This needlepoint was from my grandmother's family, and I saved it because somebody had made it, but I didn't particularly like it. Um, and I had not engaged in the Trump presidency in my textile-based work because I hadn't found the language that I could engage with. And so when he said, "I'm a very stable genius," it was almost a calling out. And I stitched it in an hour, posted it on Instagram, and I'd like to say the rest is history, but we're living in history. And
Yeah.
as we speak right now, I should tell everyone that I'm getting over COVID, and I'm very mindful of what the impact was of the pandemic on my work and on Tiny Pricks Project and um, on the on the world, and it's very sobering. So when Marla made I appreciate Marla's comment and Dina's too. We're all addressing very difficult issues, and there is loss, sadness, and grief embedded in this work. Though I promise, if you see the exhibit, I think you'll feel very inspired and comforted, and in a way really present, which I think is hard to feel these days. But I'm mindful as my whole body is trying to recover from COVID that that's part of what my work is about, is sort of a kind of recovery.
Well, your initial posting of this piece just resonated throughout the country with so many people. Now there are 5,000 plus contributions to the project. Can you give us just a little sense of some of the themes that visitors can enjoy at the ShowUp space?
Well, I think Christine touched on the themes, although when we were planning the show over the last 2 years, the themes have changed. And when you showed my two images, I thought it was interesting that the show is called Material Progress, because you showed this piece, which started a international project for me that is grown beyond my wildest expectations, to the Heather Cox Richardson quote, which is about from a historian. Sorry, I just led you to the next one. Um, and have we made progress? And so I feel right now on this call with all of you that we have made progress, because I made that first piece alone, trying to address, I'd been working with peace building organizations, with textile, but I found myself alone during the Trump presidency in a way I had not been before. And so that we're all on this call, I think that what people will find when they walk in, the themes are, how can we stay connected? How can we connect through materials? So we're talking about screens, we're talking about walls, we're talking about data points. The Tiny Pricks, if anything, is a massive collection of data points.
Mhm.
We're talking about memories, we're talking about language, letters, family, memory, loss. All these themes are all there. And I think yet when you look at the work that we have up in the gallery, there's a lot that you can bring to it too. And that's what I really love about this exhibit is the three of us have very defined practices and involved, and Christine has a vision. But when you go in there, I feel like there's a lot for you to read based on who you are and what you come to. So to prescribe the themes, I think there are many different themes, but the main theme is, I think, space and language, and whether it's a visual language or it's data points or it's actually texts, which I have stitched or participants have stitched. So how are we sharing this space, and what are we reading into that shared space?
Wonderful. And I know this has led to wonderful new book that recently came out, Crafting a Better Nation, which we're going to be fortunate on another program to hear much more about. Um, just a very quick word, what's entailed in that volume.
Thanks. And actually, it's called Crafting a Better World. I was more
A better
ambitious.
world. Sorry, you are.
As a
Thank you.
permanent resident of Canada, I just said world, not nation. But
Thank you.
well, that book is very much like this show. Whenever I'm invited to do something, my instant thought is, how can I include more people? Because I learned so much from being involved with other artists. And so I was approached to write a book about craftivism in time for the election, so last year. because my publisher wasn't sure what was going to be happening, was pretty sure we would all need a way to take a deep breath, find space, stay engaged, stay hopeful, find some point into this public space of politics, and ultimately to vote or to help other people vote. And so I went to about 25 people that have inspired me and inspired my work, and I could write 5 or 6 books. I could just, it's so fascinating to see, from the beginning of Tiny Pricks Project to now, how engaged artists have become in politics. And I think they always have been, but there's artists for Harris, there's makers for Kamala, there's just, I've just, in the space I live in Instagram, there's so much creative energy that's going into this, not just politics here, but politics everywhere. And unfortunately, that's really, really, really needed right now. We're
Most
drowning.
definitely. Most definitely. No, it's very dynamic piece. Look forward to hearing more about it on another occasion. Thank you so much. Christine, in closing, I know you've orchestrated some wonderful additional programming all around the exhibition. Would you briefly share maybe either what's happened or what is coming up?
Happily. Yes, whenever we have an exhibition, one of the things that we like to do is offer the occasion to artists to do an artist talk. And or in Diana's case, we did a book signing and workshop, which was particularly fun because there was a way in which people are getting engaged in learning the actual craft itself. But for Marla and Dina, we have set up artist talk, excuse me. So we had Marla's on first Friday in October, and Dina's is coming up on November 1st, which is the first Friday. It's going to sneak up on everyone. That may have happened before this actually comes out. We'll see, but it'll be a great time. If anyone does not know what First Fridays are in SoWa and at some of the museums in Boston, if that we all are open late on the first Friday of every month, that runs year round, I'd highly encourage people to go and check it out. We also offer some of our programming in terms of artist talks online. And so I would also tell people to make sure that they are subscribed to you can do this via our website, to our newsletters, and you'll be aware of all of our programming throughout the year.
Terrific, terrific. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. Want to thank all of you so much for taking the time to be here, for informing us about your contributions, for you, Christine, for sharing the mission of ShowUp. Definitely encourage people to make their way to the exhibition and ShowUp by December 1st, and to follow up in the contact information where you can find out more about everyone who is featured today. Continued success for all of you with future endeavors.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, Jay.
Thank you.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.